But let's watch a PragerU video. Left or liberal is the name of the video. I'm pretty sure we haven't watched this one yet.
What's the difference
Oh, and
between a liberal
and it's
and a
fucking,
leftist?
it's actually Prager himself, man. Dennis Prager. This fucking ghoul. Okay. Like, imagine spending your entire life writing propaganda that basically joins to, yeah, putting down slave revolts was a good thing. Like, that's basically what his multi-tier long-term grift is. Like, yeah, like slavery is good and we should like put down slave revolts. That's basically what he is. Fucking asshat. Let's watch this video breaking down left or liberal. Which one is which? I'm pretty sure I've not played this one. If I have, let me know in the chat. I'm pretty sure I have not.
What's the difference between a liberal and a leftist? This question stumps most people because they think liberal and left are essentially the same. But they're not.
Because you do that.
In fact, liberalism and leftism have almost nothing in common. But the left has appropriated the word liberal so effectively, almost everyone, liberals, leftists, and conservatives, thinks they are synonymous.
Dude, I'm sorry. Like, we're 20 seconds in, 26 seconds in, it's already like just blatant bullshit. Okay. Who spent 8 years calling neoliberals like Barack Obama a secret Marxist plant? It was Fox News. It was the right. Okay. Like, even like Reagan used to call his political opponents like socialists and communists. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, this is a long running issue of the right calling somewhat progressive liberals Marxists and communists and all the like. I mean, come on here. Like, this is just bullshit. Like, blatant bullshit. That's what this is.
But they're not. Let me offer you 6 examples. 1, race. This is probably the most obvious difference between liberal and left. The liberal position on race has always been A, the color of a person's skin is insignificant, and B, those who believe race is significant are racists. Meanwhile, the left believes the very opposite. To the left, it's the liberal attitude toward race. It's unimportant. That is racist. That's why the University of California.
Does he know that, like, the classical liberals that I think he wants to say that he's a part of were the slave-owning class of America that didn't want to free slaves? Or, I mean, do you want to talk about like the French liberals, right? You want to talk about like the Declaration of Rights of Man, the National Assembly, and all that, and how the issue of race and slavery was continually pushed to the back burner until massive riots from sort of proto-communists of the day, the sans culottes. Like, honestly speaking, like, we had Robespierre, Maximilien Robespierre, who I guarantee Dennis Prager does not believe is a liberal, but I mean, he very much is just a classic liberal. Didn't like the term slavery and prefer the term non-freed. Okay. Like, classic liberalism is the protection of private property. Was there like a massive ethnic and racial base that were the private property of another racial and ethnic base at the time? Yeah, there was, huh? Yeah, that's right. You had tens and tens and tens of millions of black slaves. So, but no, don't worry about that. That's cool. We can just ignore that, right, Dennis Prager? That's not a big concern.
It's unimportant. That is racist. That's why the University of California officially lists the statement, "There is only one race, the human race," as racist. And liberals have always been passionately committed to racial integration, while the left is increasingly committed to racial segregation, such as all Black dormitories and separate Black graduations at universities. 2, capitalism. Liberals have always been pro-capitalism because liberals are committed to free enterprise and because they know capitalism is the only way to lift great numbers of people out of poverty.
It's not the only way to lift great numbers of people out of poverty. You can mention the Soviet Union, mention China, mention Cuba, mention Bolivia, mention Venezuela. It's not that hard. Like, we can literally mention like any socialist country or experiment and how it greatly benefited in eliminating poverty and the like. What was the first one that he had? What was it? Free enterprise. Well, I mean, exploitive enterprise, which, I mean, free market is necessarily an oppressive and exploitive market.
Great numbers of people out of poverty. It is true that liberals want government to play a bigger role in the economy than conservatives do. But liberals never opposed capitalism, and they were never for socialism. Opposition to capitalism and advocacy of socialism are left-wing values. 3, nationalism.
Sure.
Liberals believe in the nation state, whether that nation is the United States, Brazil, or France. But because the left divides the world by class rather than by national identity, the left has always opposed nationalism. So,
no. I mean, the issue of like nationalism is an issue where it's different for different groups of people at different times, right? I often talk about how nationalism from the third world is often a liberatory tool, a tool that you can use towards liberation, right? That's why Marcus Garvey has such a hold on Pan-Africanism, right? Also, how you can argue like Marxist-Leninism was used so much in the third world because Marxist-Leninism is naturally more of a nationalistic understanding of socialism and communism because you're working within the nation or the nation state apparatus. And even like beyond that, right? Like if you actually read, and I know Dance Prager has never actually read any literature from like real leftists, right? Like any real Marxist literature. Like he's read the Communist Manifesto. That's it. Guaranteed. That's why everyone only reads that. But the 19th century sort of founders of modern leftist ideology were very much concerned with the idea of nationalism, the topic of nationalism. How do we define this term? What nation groups we should support? Like, this was a very prevalent topic in the foundation of leftism, is the topic of nationalism. To say that the left always has discounted nationalism is just not true. Our understanding of nationalism is vastly different, though, than a fascist understanding of nationalism, a capitalist understanding of nationalism. And that nuance is just gone for most people, which is fine. We're going to play after this, to be honest, the roundtable, right, with Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, and Angela Davis, along with other people in 1973. There's a question at the very end that Kwame Ture answers when it comes to nationalism and Pan-Africanism. I think it's really relevant to like this sort of narrative that's been put out there by the right. But anyways, moving on.
While liberals have always wanted to protect American sovereignty and borders, The left is for open borders. When the writers of Superman were liberals, Superman was a proud American whose very motto was truth, justice, and the American way. But that all changed a few years ago when left-wing writers took over the comic strip and had Superman renounce his American citizenship to be a citizen of the world. The left has contempt for nationalism, seeing it as the road to fascism.
What?
Better that we should all be citizens of the world in a world without borders. 4, view of...
I mean, that is the end goal, right? Like nationalism as a liberation tool. I think there's a lot of nuance to that discussion that we can have. But the end goal is, well, like, we don't have borders. There are no states. There are no classes. Like, of course. You got us. Oh, no. You helped define what communism and anarchism is. A stateless classless society. Oh, no.
4, view of America. Liberals have always venerated America. Watch American films from the 1930s through the 1950s, and you will be watching overtly patriotic, America-celebrating films, virtually all produced, directed, and acted by liberals. Liberals were quite aware of America's imperfections, but they agreed with Abraham Lincoln that America is the last best hope of Earth. The left, however, believes the left is the last best hope of Earth and regards America as racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, violent, and imperialistic.
Oh, you got the
5,
last one, importantly.
free
that's a biggie.
speech.
Yeah.
No one has been
pretty
more
much nailed
committed
it,
than
to be
American liberals to the famous statement, I wholly disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. But the left is leading the first widespread suppression of free speech in modern American history, from the universities to the tech companies that govern the internet to almost...
So like McCarthyism didn't happen. Is that what you're telling me? Like the massive, massive crackdown in the Prohibition era, not only towards gangsters, of course, but towards leftist groups as well. That wasn't an attack on free speech? No? No? Oh, this is the first one? Okay. Just want to make sure we got this right.
history, from the universities to the tech companies that govern the internet to almost every other institution and place of work. Of course, the left claims to only oppose hate speech, but putting aside the fact that the left deems hate speech anything it differs with, protecting what you or I might consider hate speech is the entire point of free speech. 6, Western civilization. Liberals have always championed and sought to protect Western civilization.
I mean, free speech is like a double-edged sword. Like freedom is double-edged sword. Like you have positive and negative freedoms. Like that's just the reality. I've talked about this before. What's his name? Forgetting the guy's name now. Hold on. Let me get the book out. Find this motherfucker's name if I can. Carl Polanyi in 1944. This is from David Harvey in A Brief History of Neoliberalism. There are, he noted, two kinds of freedom, one good and the other bad. Among the latter, he listed the freedom to exploit one's fellows, or the freedom to make inordinate gains without commensurable service to the community. The freedom to keep technological inventions from being used for public benefit, or the freedom to profit from public calamities secretly engineered for private advantage. But Polanyi continued, quote, the market economy under which these freedoms throve also produce freedoms highly praised, freedoms of conscience, freedom of speech, freedom of meeting, freedom of association, freedom to choose one's job. They were to a large extent byproducts of the same economy that are also responsible for the evil freedoms. And there's more to this that I think is relevant. And Polanyi was definitely against neoliberalism, but again, like we're not against freedom. We understand that when it comes to the system we have right now, when you talk about freedoms, there's freedoms that are for us and freedoms against us. And that's just the reality of the free market, free enterprise, of this Republican democracy that we live under. Okay.
Liberals celebrate the West's unique moral, philosophical, artistic, musical, and literary achievements, and have taught them at virtually every university. The most revered liberal in American political history, President Franklin Roosevelt, often cited the need to protect Western civilization and even Christian civilization. Yet when President Donald Trump spoke of the need to protect Western civilization in a speech in Warsaw, the left-wing media, also known as the mainstream media, denounced him. They argue that Western civilization is no better than any other, and that Western civilization...
Like, what? First off, FDR was a borderline social democrat. Like, to compare him to Trump is just ridiculous. And first off, FDR was not perfect. The motherfucker was definitely an imperialist. He had concentration camps in the U.S. Like, what are we talking about here? But secondly, like, this belief that Western civilization, that the U.S. specifically, is some predetermined shining city on a hill, is where we go from a nationalism that is fine, I guess, in terms of certain aspects, to a ultra-nationalism attached to an imperialist hegemonic control of the world, that it makes it quite different than people in the third world developing some sense of nationalism to liberate themselves from colonialism. These are very different.
Is just a euphemism for white supremacy. So then, if liberalism and leftism are so different, why don't liberals oppose the left? In a nutshell, because they have been taught all their lives to fear the right. But as one of the best-known liberals in America, Harvard Law School professor Alan Dershowitz said,
I'm sorry, I need a second there. He just called Alan Dershowitz one of the best liberal professors. I implore everyone to go check out Norman Finkelstein obliterating Alan Dershowitz. We might watch that just because it's just, God, nauseating.
As a liberal, as an American, and as a Jew, I far more fear the left than the right. Dear liberals, conservatives are not your enemy. The left is.
They know that. And you know that. The liberals have historically persecuted left-wing organizations, groups, and peoples more than the right. So, like, oh my God, I just, every time I sit and watch these videos, it's gonna be fun, it'd be funny, haha. And like the first 20 seconds, it's funny, and then it's like 5 minutes later, it's like, oh my fucking God, it doesn't end, and people really like eat this shit up. God damn.
I'm Dennis Prager.
That was just so bad.